Hello, everybody. This is Matt, and I am back from a nice hot week at the beach where, in addition to the beach, I enjoyed your posts on the segregation debate. And I just want to give some feedback and some thoughts after going through all of the posts and thinking about the debate and where we stand in terms of the class. So the first thing I want to do is say thank you. This is kind of the first real learning analytics project that we've taken on where you've had to find real data and work with it. Hopefully it's the next step up from the data exercises we've been doing. And I think that everyone, both teams and the people involved, did a really good job approaching the topic. I like the types of questions that came up, and I think that from what you produced, clearly we've come a long way in using Tableau Prep and Desktop, and we're able to pull things together and make some points. Now, one of the biggest reminders, just in what you posted and also on the Slack and the groups, is just that data science is hard work. It's hard to get the right data set. It's hard to format it. It's hard to import it. It's hard to even know what the columns mean. And then when you do finally get it working, you realize that a bunch of the fields you want have S's in them and you can't add them because they're not numbers and you don't know what to do. So I think that we were up against a lot of that and that people did an admirable job and put in a lot of effort to make it work. But it just takes time. And even if it's tedious things like changing all of the column headers in Excel before you import it, or trying to download software that will let you manipulate one file format into another file format, these are all the types of things that people that work with data have to do. And today, even when I was looking at some of the New York City school data, some of the stuff takes a long time, even on a fast computer. So there's some patience involved in it as well. I'm hoping, though, that now that you've had this experience of going from beginning to end with kind of raw data, formulating questions, and producing final outputs, that you're in a much better place for understanding the final project. And that's what we're going to turn to this week. So I want to give you some feedback on the debate and the work that you did that can help you reflect on the debate and think about how you could do better maybe if you're working on it, or what things you should keep doing because they work really well, and also how you're going to incorporate that into the project that you're going to design on your own for the final project for the class. So some of the things I thought both teams did really well were asking good questions and formulating questions that were based on the data. I think that you did a nice job bringing in outside research, and in general, I thought the closings were really good. And I mentioned that not just because they were well presented by both Robert and Casey, but also because it showed me that even during the course of the week, that you changed and were able to reflect on what we did. So even if it wasn't perfect or you didn't make the arguments perfectly, I think that it showed a good, strong reflection by both teams that was evident in the closings. There's some things that were more mixed. Some of the posts clearly tried to use the best display to make the data easier to understand, but some of them just seemed to maybe not have the best match between Tableau's tools and the data that they were outputting, or they just weren't quite formatted right. And that's something that I think we can do a little bit better with, and just playing with Tableau a little more. And hopefully the video this week will also give you some ideas, and looking at some visualizations will give you a sense of what works. And then some things that I think we can do better, kind of keep working on. Spending more time describing the data and communicating what the data tells us and where it comes from is important. A lot of times it seemed in the arguments, the presenter was intimately knowledgeable with the data that they were talking about, but the audience really wasn't. So you have to make it clear, and that can just be a text label that's on there, or you can do it in the video itself. But what data are we talking about? And in this case, where are these schools? What years was the data? What tests are they talking about? What is the test? Maybe a brief description of it. Like some more upfront you can't just start in the middle and start laying out the facts. You need to take a more holistic approach. And if you think about it, the same way as writing a good essay is telling a good story with data. So you need a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I think we kind of got a lot of the arguments just in the middle part. And along those lines, I think that both teams could have done a little more work with just some basic descriptive statistics, just like the sums and averages. How many schools are we talking about? How many students are we talking about? How many schools are segregated? How many students are in segregated schools? Are they trending to have more segregated schools or fewer segregated schools? These are kind of easy sums that you can do with the whole data set. And it would have been good to present that maybe in argument one or in the openings, just to kind of place the arguments you're making within the context. And along those lines, I think it's important that we don't want to confuse kind of our background and summary of the research that's out there with our own original research. So I think, for example, when Dakota was talking, she did a really good job bringing some interesting outside resources, and also Xingwei. But I think it's important to be very clear that some of the arguments are not coming out of our data, and they're not original arguments that you're making based on the data, and they're just kind of work that other people have done that you're referencing. So in the final project, like, make that more clear, and you're probably going to want to bring in more outside research also. The same way if you were writing a research paper, you'd want to know what other people said about it, and you would put that up front. That would be the first part of your research paper. So if there's salient points that you've learned from doing background research, you want to describe that up front, and then maybe reference it in relation to the new arguments that you're making based on the data. So more generally, as I noted, this type of data science is hard. It's a lot of work. It takes time. There's no easy way around it. If you're not sure, just ask Robert how much time he spent trying to get his Excel to do what he wanted it to do within prep. But I want to remind you of some good problem-solving techniques that I think are applicable to the type of work we're doing with Tableau and Tableau Prep. One, I think when you're confronted with a large problem or a complex problem, it's always good to simplify the problem. So if you were, in this case, you're trying to make an argument about the dropout rates of different ethnicities within segregated and non-segregated schools over the course of time, like, that's kind of a complex problem. So you might want to first, just as kind of a first step in practicing it, you might want to do something like an average dropout rate for every school in the data set across ethnicity. So for every student, every school, what is the dropout rate? So that reduces the complexity, but it lets you solve like a key part of your problem. And then once you have that working and it's working perfectly, you can add another step. So instead of just every school for every student for every year, you could then group it by year. And once you've done that, then you can get trending data to see if it's going up or going down. And then you can add ethnicity to it. And if you take that stepwise approach and make smaller problems, it can actually help you get to the larger, more complex problems. Along those lines, like especially at the beginning, you want to solve a problem that you know how to solve already. So don't try to do something that you don't know how to do or that the data doesn't support. So the first problem, you want to go after the easy solutions. That way you'll know that your import works, that your data set is right, that all the different pieces are working, and don't go for the most complex thing first. So solve a problem you can solve if you're having problem getting to the result you want. Ask a simpler question first. So those are a couple tips. And then I think generally that we need a little more work with doing aggregate data, which is how you you group things together in Tableau, and this can either be done in prep or it can be done in desktop. And I just think that that's a really important aspect of working with these tools. And I'm going to try to put together a couple of videos this week showing you some things you can do with aggregates and aggregation. So, these aren't necessarily criticisms of the work that were done last week. They're just things that stuck in my mind that we can do a little better and where we can keep working, and we still have some time to improve. And I'm looking forward to the final projects where we can see how far we've come from where we are now, and I can already see how far we've come from the beginning of the class, and I think it's great. So now, as we turn to week 9, the main reading or video this week is about data visualization in Tableau. So watch that video, and it's also time to really get started on your final project. So we've got a discussion forum for you where you're going to post your final project idea, and in particular, make sure that you have a title, a good description of your project, and you really need to know and note in your post where the data is coming from. So you need to make sure that you can actually get the data to investigate the questions you have for your research. All right, as always, Aaron and I are available for questions, and I'm looking forward to seeing more work.